News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. Here's your closing bell for this Wednesday. Fed decision day. Stocks rose, bond yields fell after the Fed decided to hold monetary policy steady. Investors balancing central bank forecasts for slower growth, higher inflation, and 2 more rate cuts later this year. We do bring you closing numbers each day here at Bloomberg. The S&P 500 gained 61 points. NASDAQ gained 247 points. The Dow gained 385 points. The 10-year Treasury yield at 4.24% and the 2-year yield at 3.97%. Federal Reserve officials held the benchmark interest rate steady and slowed the pace of reducing the balance sheet, citing increased uncertainty around the economic outlook. Fed Chair Jerome Powell explains the risk of a recession has moved up, but it's not high.
Forecasters a number of them have raised their possibility of a recession somewhat, but still at relatively moderate levels, still in the region of the traditional, because they were extremely low. If you go back 2 months, people were saying that the likelihood of a recession was extremely low. So has moved up, but it's not high.
And Powell explains while consumer sentiment has fallen, economic activity is still on the move.
We do understand that sentiment has fallen off pretty sharply, but economic activity has not yet. And so we're watching carefully. So I would tell people that the economy seems to be healthy.
New rate projections show a narrow majority of Fed officials expect 0.5 percentage point in rate cuts this year, implying 2 quarter-point rate reductions. In world news, during that phone call between President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Trump suggested the U.S. take control of Ukrainian power plants to ensure their security. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz released a statement calling the phone call fantastic and saying that President Trump told Zelensky that, quote, American ownership of those plants could be the best protection for that infrastructure. The men also discussed the possibility of a ceasefire, with Zelensky backing a proposal to halt strikes on Russian energy assets. President Trump described the hour-long phone call as very good and that peace talks are on track. But the president's optimistic predictions may be over-optimistic, says Brett Bruin, president of Global Situation Room.
Putin put out what was a pretty alarming list of demands, including that the U.S., the West, stop supplying not just military aid, intelligence, that Ukraine couldn't even recruit for its military. This is Putin saying, my objectives are the same as when my troops crossed over into Ukrainian territory.
The Kremlin says Putin told Trump yesterday that for there to be any ceasefire, there must be a stop to foreign military aid and intelligence. White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff says he believes Putin is acting in good faith.
I tend to believe that President Putin is operating in good faith. He said that he was going to be operating in good faith to the president yesterday, and I take him at his word.
White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff spoke on Bloomberg Radio and Television. The talks between the Trump and Putin administrations are not over, and former senior U.S. intelligence agent Norman Rubel tells Bloomberg News they will be long and difficult.
The Russians are going to seek sanctions relief. They're going to put forward maximalist demands regarding Ukraine. The Trump administration will start to pressure the Russians for efforts against Iran or even North Korea. But the Russians are going to play the long game here.
Former senior U.S. intelligence agent Norman Rubel says those talks could eventually return to broader issues. Israel Defense Forces have begun a limited ground operation in the center and south of the Gaza Strip with the aim of expanding the area of security and creating a partial buffer between the north and south of Gaza. The International Criminal Court, or ICC, is facing an existential threat caused by President Trump's sanctions, which have had a broad impact on the court's banking, insurance, and IT systems. The sanctions have caused companies to quit partnerships with the ICC and staff to leave out of fear of persecution. ICC President Tomoko Akane is appealing to the European Commission to intervene. That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.